Buffy Saint-Marie, Narcissist, Part 2. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. We are continuing the examination of the evidence to make a determination as to what Buffy Saint-Marie is. Before we get into the body of the rather monumental allegation that has been raised against her, we're going to take a tour through lots of different tidbits of information about her to help us build up a picture about this individual and also to consider how this information might be interpreted. According to the book A to Z of American Indian Women, after the sudden deaths of both of her parents, she, born as Beverly, was adopted by family relatives Albert and Winifred Sainte-Marie, nicknamed Buffy, and raised in Massachusetts. Thus, the story is that her parents both died and she was adopted by a white couple. This, of course, has been suggested as to be inaccurate. Is this therefore a revision of history and a pity play, causing people to feel sorry for her because she lost her biological parents and that she never knew them? Or is it just a mistaken recollection? She taught herself to play piano aged 3 and began setting her poems to music at the age of 4. It's demonstrating that she's clearly talented. She told Vogue about her lifelong fascination with musical experimentation. As a little kid, when I was 3, I discovered a piano and I found out it made noise, and I was fascinated and taught myself how to do what I wanted to do on it. I could play fake Beethoven and do other things with strange chords that other people didn't use but that I liked. I banged on pots and pans. I played with rubber bands. I blow on grass. I played the mouth bow. I saw a Buchla and Matrix and ARP synth early in the 60s as soon as they came out, and I was just interested. Later I was using a Synclavier and a Fairlight, which were the earliest standing music computers. At 16 she taught herself guitar and ultimately invented 32 different ways of tuning her instrument, creating sounds completely unique to her music. She was so inquisitive that she would take apart the vacuum cleaner and try to create her own headphones by hooking its tubes to the broken record player. She talked about growing up Indigenous in Massachusetts. She stated, "I learned very fast not to argue with my teachers. In school, they said, Columbus discovered America, or the American Indian was. My teachers told me music was lines and notes and paper. I never disagreed with them. I just learned to keep my head down and avoid conflict. Then I'd go home and play my own fake classical music." If this recollection is accurate, this doesn't show somebody that appears to be revolting with regard to potential threats to control. Perhaps at this juncture it was too early, and if she is a narcissist, her narcissism had not yet formed. Or might it be the case that she simply wasn't, that she was somebody that sought to fit in rather than engage in conflict, that because she had no need for control? She began researching her Indigenous heritage in her teens and making trips back to the Piapot Reserve and connecting with her Cree community. Clearly, the issue of her Indigenous ancestry was particularly important, and as a teenager, she was already beginning to make use of it. This may well point to the fact that she had an honest belief that she was Indigenous rather than having decided, do you know what, I will be Indigenous. She majored in teaching and Oriental philosophy at the University of Massachusetts and graduated with plans to travel to India. But she was also writing and performing songs. She explained that she was playing songs for the girls in her dorm and her house mother, Teresa de Kerpley, who was from Europe. She really encouraged me, and she encouraged me to listen to people like Edith Piaf, Carmen Amaya, the flamenco dancer singer, people from other countries. So from the start of playing for other people, I was absorbing and reflecting, I think, a very wide world culture. International students at the university were a big influence on me. Is this character trait acquisition or simply the way that people are influenced by people around them? She was already performing Universal Soldier in coffee houses in New York City in 1963, but she was banned from singing it on the radio and TV. Donovan made it a huge hit and helped it cross over into the mainstream in 1965. Later that year, she developed bronchial pneumonia and almost ruined her voice. While recovering from the infection, she became addicted to codeine, and her subsequent struggle to get clean became the basis for her song, Codeine. Guitarist Danny Kalb told Whispering Pines, when I saw Buffy Saint-Marie singing about codeine, I knew it would be several more years before I had enough experience under my belt to sing the way she did. She was raw and great. At the time, she didn't consider herself much of a singer, but audiences loved her. Might that point to a lack of grandiosity? Of course, grandiosity isn't always present with every narcissist. Billboard named her the Best New Artist of 1964. The songs were the source of her confidence. I didn't think I was much of a singer, but because of the songs, I had the nerve to step out onto a stage and to give people the songs. So I wasn't concentrating on myself as a singer. I probably should have been concentrating more. Later on, I learned to sing. But she found the sudden fame overwhelming. She vanished to Spain to spend 3 months alone without telling anyone, not even her manager, who didn't find out where she was until he got her bills for the tickets. That doesn't ordinarily sound like the behaviour of a narcissist that would shirk such fame. Or might it be that it amounted to a threat to control, and she sought to assert control over that threat, nullifying it by vanishing by retreating. Though she'd written one of the most covered, popular and scathing anti-war songs, she found herself removed from the scene and instead focused on what was happening on the American Indian reservations. During the civil rights and anti-war marches, even though my song Universal Soldier was all over the streets, I was absent. I threw myself into another direction and covered the base nobody else knew about, the reservations. I was friends with Stokely Carmichael, Muhammad Ali, Harry Belafonte and other African-American civil rights giants. I took Dick Gregory to his first reservation. It broke his heart. He cried on the airplane back. With Joan Baez and Bob Dylan and all the other famous artists appearing at every photo op, I felt that other issues didn't need my help. The reservations were a different story. Again, she's utilising the Indigenous heritage and doing so in a way when it was perhaps less popular than other activist movements. In 1965, she told Time, I've written hundreds of songs, and only half a dozen of them are about protest. I believe in leaving politics to the experts, only sometimes the experts don't know what's going on. I'm trying to scatter what I can of beauty in the places I think that need it, to get rid of the boredom and the meanness in the world. Might that be a manifestation of emotional empathy? Time labelled her a penny pincher, even though she was reportedly making about $100,000 a year at the time. In truth, Sainte-Marie knew she was financially stable, so she turned to philanthropy. She founded the Neowan Foundation, which gave law school scholarships to Native Americans. Again, playing on the Indigenous ancestry, but doing good through it. Is this simple facade management, or is it actually being driven by emotional empathy? She told Vogue, when I was maybe 24, I was a young singer with too much money. I knew I'd be able to have 2 meals a day for the rest of my life, so I took my leftover singing money and I started a scholarship called the Neowan Foundation for American Indian Education. I really set out to address the problem I saw in Indian country, where Indian kids would graduate from high school, want to go to college, but didn't know how to negotiate the path to college. They didn't know how to get a scholarship. They weren't connected by family and friends. I have an Academy Award, but that's not my biggest honour. My biggest honour was to find out that 2 of my early scholarship recipients had gone on to found tribal colleges. Can you imagine that kind of thrill? In 1967, Black World, then Negro Digest, reported on Sainte-Marie's 17 magazine interview. She stated, "Lots of white teenagers don't know what it means to be deprived. I don't mean that you can't buy a party dress. I mean you may not be able to do your homework because the electricity is to be shut off at 9 o'clock in the evening. Or you may not be able to do your homework because you have a job in the evening to help you stay in school. Or you may not be able to stay in school at all." Might this be another manifestation of emotional empathy? Later that year, Billboard labelled her the patron saint of non-hippie hipsters, based on her show at the Philharmonic, wherein she received a 10-minute standing ovation from a crowd of well-bred intellectuals. She appeared in the TV western The Virginian. According to the LA Review of Books, in the 2012 write-up of Sainte-Marie's biography, It's My Way, she made 2 demands when director Leo Penn came calling. That's Sean Penn's father. First, she insisted that the studio cast native actors for all the Indian parts. No Indians, no Buffy. She also advocated that the writers bring complexity to her own role. She told them, I'm not interested in playing Pocahontas. Again, playing on the Indigenous ancestry, but is she doing in a way which is utilising emotional empathy, or is she simply using this as a tool to get to the prime aims? Sainte-Marie married Hawaiian surfer Dwayne Bugbee in 1968, but they divorced in 1971. A short marriage, might that be indicative of a tempestuous relationship with a narcissist? There is no other information about what went on in that marriage, and therefore would only be simple speculation based upon the shortness of it. She wrote the title song for the film Soldier Blue, which depicted the brutal slaughter of the Cheyenne village by Colorado State Militia. No one knows Soldier Blue in North America. I can guarantee you won't find 3 people in the US who know it. It was taken out of theatres after a few days, Sainte-Marie told The Guardian in 2009. When the reporter asked her why the film was yanked from the theatre, she answered, what year did Soldier Blue come out? 1970. Oh, that'll be Richard Nixon. She was active in and supportive of the American Indian movement, which was formed to address a variety of issues pertaining to sovereignty, leadership, land treaties, problems with law enforcement and elected officials, and harassment and racism. The 70s were particularly volatile following the murder of 2 Lakota men from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation by white men who received minimal charges and sentences, as well as corruption in the government. She was prolific in her first 7 years releasing records. Not only did she release a new album every year between 1964 and 1969, she had enough material for her first best-of compilation, and there was enough left over that she released a best-of Volume 2 in 1971. In 1972, her album Moonshop featured her highest Billboard charting pop single, Mr. Can't You See? In 1972, the Buffy Saint-Marie songbook was published. The first print run alone was 20,000 copies. Despite all of her earlier success, her relationship with the label had been strained for years. She wanted to be released from her contract, and finally, with the release and subsequent failure of 1973's Quiet Places, she successfully dissolved her relationship with Vanguard Records. Was this an individual that was acting with a sense of entitlement and proving too difficult to control, needing to go elsewhere? Or was it another instance of an artist having a problematic relationship with the label, because the label, of course, will have secured much more favourable terms in the embryonic stage of the relationship? She left Vanguard because she wanted to make music that just wasn't about her voice and a guitar. She'd never even had a personal manager or booking agent, opting instead to go out on the road alone, setting up her own tours with a variety of agencies. She cobbled together $45,000 and went to Nashville to make the album that would eventually become her major label debut, Buffy, and this helped her to break through to mainstream American audiences. Her live shows had always been must-see events. In 1974, Phil Gellimore in Billboard concludes that her MCA debut Buffy should bring Ms. Sainte-Marie to the forefront, where she's always belonged. Sainte-Marie said she wanted little kids and their caretakers to know one thing above all, that Indians exist. We are all not dead and stuffed in museums like the dinosaurs. With the help of Big Bird and Oscar and friends, we put out this simple message of reality 3 times a day to the children of 73 countries of the world, providing them with positive realities before racism and stereotyping ever had a chance to set in. During her time on Sesame Street, she acted, sang and played music. She shared songs and stories of Indigenous people, and also became the first woman to breastfeed on Sesame Street in 1977. She left Sesame Street in 1981 and won an Oscar in 1982 for Up Where We Belong, the theme song to a film An Officer and a Gentleman. In 2013, she said, "Right now my Oscar is in the Smithsonian because I'm the first Native American, I think the only, to win an Oscar." Again, throughout, there is this repeated use of her ancestry, utilising it as the reason that her award would be in the Smithsonian, utilising it as a means to put out a message on Sesame Street. In 1985, alongside Martin Sheen, she narrated Broken Rainbow, a documentary about the government relocation of 10,000 Navajo Indians in Arizona. In 1986, she scored the film Harold of Orange, an American Indian comedy. In 1989, she scored Where the Spirit Lives, about Aboriginal children being stolen and forced into residential schools. She starred, or rather she appeared in The Broken Chain, which is a film about two Iroquois brothers caught in the Revolutionary War, and it starred Pierce Brosnan. She was inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame in 1995 at the Juno Awards. She thanked Aboriginal musicians for their inspiration, several people in the music industry, and the Apple Company for the computers and technology that helped make it easier for her to write and record. The recording industry really is about more than making money and getting famous. False humility or genuine? Her digital art in 1996 was featured in a one-woman exhibit at the Institute of American Indian Arts Museum in Santa Fe. Pink Village, which was printed on Kodak Professional Enduro Metallic VC digital paper, showed an image of a native elder looming above and inside a valley in which teepees are visible. The colours are hot pinks and other bright hues, fragmented and pixelated. The atmosphere is one of wisdom, bearing witness to chaos and destruction. You'll see throughout so much of what she does with regard to her music, the creation of soundtracks, the appearance in film, the art that she engaged in was all linked to this Indigenous ancestry. It really very much was a core of her being. She founded the Cradle Board teaching project after her son's grade 5 teacher asked for input on the curriculum regarding American Indians. Sainte-Marie explained, "We looked at the available teaching materials and they failed. Lots of dead text about dead Indians. I wrote up a simple corrected version of the encyclopedia material. Each year I continue to upgrade and expand this little Indian unit." In 1997, she was named to the Order of Canada. In 1999, she was inducted into Canada's Walk of Fame. Following another 15-year hiatus from releasing albums, she released 2008's Running for the Drum. It won the Juno Award for the Best Aboriginal Album. "I didn't fall out of love with music," she told The Guardian about the second lengthy break. "In fact, I'm always writing and recording. But there's no sense in putting out an album unless you're going to be in the music business and tour, and I just didn't have the time. But I had these songs and I was kind of hot to go on the road again." In 2009, she told the Huffington Post that she was an amateur astronomer. "On Hawaii, we have this local Navy base, and I have security clearance to go and use their telescopes. I'm an amateur astronomer, and when you look at the stars, or even when you spend time with them, your kitty cat in your lap, to me it's the most beautiful natural phenomenon on the earth. It's what connects us all together with everything and each other." In an interview with the Honolulu Advertiser, Sainte-Marie talked about the anonymity of her life in Hawaii. She lives under an assumed name on a farm with 27 goats, a cat and a retired horse. She also gives away her trees. "I give away Christmas trees, little ones and big ones. The very tall Norfolks go to wood turners who use the wood for art projects, for bowls and platters. Could be some folks of wooden bowls that were from my trees." Is this false generosity on her part? Or is this part of what appears to be quite a thread of humility? Scorning public adoration, wanting to live anonymously. According to Blair Stonechild's 2012 Buffy Saint-Marie biography, sometime in the 1980s, Sainte-Marie learned that her music was censored and suppressed by the US government. Johnson and Nixon created a blacklist of musicians who were deemed dangerous and determined to encourage widespread citizen protest. In 1999, ex-CIA agent Charles Schlund III confirmed the Vietnam-era radio blacklists. Sainte-Marie also discovered that her phones had been tapped and that there was a 31-page FBI file on her. Sainte-Marie expanded on the contents of the file in an interview. She said, "There was nothing there. I've never broken the law. I didn't smoke pot on the White House lawn. I don't get traffic tickets, and I'm not a criminal. It was ridiculous. They had letters from people in the file asking the FBI if they had a file on me. Also, everything was blacked out. It was very petty, very high school, and very nasty." Thus, if that is accurate, no involvement in criminality, which demonstrates accountability. Of course, not every narcissist breaks the law, but it is more common given the sense of entitlement, lack of emotional empathy, and absence of accountability. In 2015, when she was aged 74, she released her newest album, Power in the Blood, to critical acclaim, and it went on to win Canada's largest cash music award, the Polaris Music Prize. She explained, "Aboriginal music has been good for a very long time, but nobody's been listening to it." Although her career has spanned 50 years, she said the big difference with Power in the Blood was that it got heard. That's always been my problem, because I had some serious issues. Most people know my first 3 albums, but as a matter of getting blacklisted in the 60s and having radio play denied to me for many years, it's real hard to regain that momentum. People did not want to hear the type of things I was saying in my generation in the 70s. Lots of different information over the years about Buffy Saint-Marie. You do not gain the impression of an individual who's had a particularly haphazard life. Is this because she's an individual that operates with emotional empathy and utilizes her ancestry for the purpose of doing good, promoting it, talking about it, helping other people that are of such ancestry? Or is this a narcissist that's particularly adept at maintaining a facade of keeping everything together, that whatever has gone on behind the scenes nobody knows about and it is kept particularly quiet? We're now going to turn to the allegation that has been made against her and to determine what that tells us about her. Join me in part 3.